The AMX 30B in water tanks is a Tier 10 French medium tank. In real life, it is France's first true MBT, or main battle tank. Armed with a 105mm gun, there were over 3,500 examples made ranging across multiple variants. The platform that it was based on was used from everything from self-propelled artillery to an ICBM unit that had nuclear capabilities. In this video, we are going to be looking into the history of the AMX 30B, its successes and its failures. It wasn't until 1966 that France got their first AMX 30s. The first tank design after World War II was the ARL-44, which we referenced in the AMX 50 series video. It was scrapped immediately as it was very outdated and based on World War II tech. They then tried the AMX 50, which was too slow, too expensive, and outdated for its time, so it was scrapped. They then moved to the AMX 13 series, which was a very successful light tank series with an oscillating turret and either a 75mm gun, or later they were all upgraded to a 90mm gun, but those were light tanks and could not be counted as main battle tanks. After the failure of the ARL-44 and the AMX 50, France bought a bunch of M47 patents from America, who was dumping them in favor of the M48 patent, but that was only a stopgap, so France went and did a joint venture with Germany and Italy to make a Europanzer, something that could be a standardized tank across NATO countries. In each country, France and Germany, came up with a prototype tank. This did not work out though, as each country had differences in opinion and design philosophy, resulting in Germany going one way with a 105mm L7 variant, this is the Leopard 1, and France going off with their 105mm F1 gun, which was used on AMX 30B, and fired a heat round as its primary. The other reason it didn't work is France was going to build a Pluton ICBM launcher system off of the AMX 30 platform, or the joint platform, and the Pluton ICBM launch system has the ability to fire nukes, which at the time Germany and Italy were not allowed to have nukes for obvious reasons. These two things caused the deal to fall flat, and each country went in their own direction, giving us the Leopard 1, and for France, to focus on this video, the AMX 30B, which they took deliveries of the first AMX 30Bs in June of 1966. The 105mm F1 gun that the AMX 30B came out with was a very unique rifled gun. It fired a heat Obus G round and an AG round, and that was it. It also could fire a smoke round, but that, isn't doing damage. The heat Obus G round was unique for its time because it was not a fin stabilized round. Instead, they came up with spin stabilization. So in the tube, when you fired the round, the outer shell would spin, but the inner shell was separated with ball bearings and did not spin. This gave it great accuracy and great pin. At 3,300 yards, it had 400mm of pin. The only setback to this was the AMX 30B never got an AP FSDS round. It was not until the early 1980s, when the AMX 30B2 came out, that it got an AP FSDS round. The AMX 30 only weighed in at about 40 tons. You may be asking how. Well, that was because it had no armor. The thickest armor on the entire tank was the front turret, which came in at about 80mm thick, which is very thin armor. It was actually Europe's lightest armored MBT of its time. It had a 720 horsepower diesel engine, which gave it a respectable 20 horsepower per ton ratio, and a top speed of 40 miles an hour on the road. The only problem with this setup was the transmission that was picked to go with the engine. It was a old, unreliable, and hard to use transmission that was derived from a German Panther. This transmission persisted with the AMX 30Bs until finally in the early 1980s the AMX 30B2 came out. With the AMX 30B2 came a new transmission. but all AMX 30Bs had this outdated Panther-derived transmission, and that was one of the drawbacks to the tank. Before we end this video, I would like to talk about some notable variants that come off of the AMX 30 or were prototypes for the AMX 30, such as the Bad Chat 25-ton, which is another tier 10 medium in the game that was actually a prototype for the AMX 30. The AMX 30A was the name of the prototype tank that was used before eventually becoming the AMX 30B. The AMX 30B2 4AD and the AMX 30B2 Brunos were two packages that came out much later in the AMX 30B2's life. There was a 155mm howitzer version. There was a SAM Roland system, the Pluton ICBM launcher we talked about earlier, the AMX 32 prototype, and many of the countries that bought AMX 30 and 30B2s made their own modifications. The AMX 30B was fast, mobile, had no rear armor, no protection, had a good 105mm gun with a solid heat round with good penetration, and it was very accurate, with a unique spin stabilization instead of the standard fin stabilization that most shells for its time and today have. It had many variants spawned off it that could be used for many different applications and uses. Served in the French Army for over 20 years until the Leclerc finally took over, and is still in use in many Middle East and South American countries to this day. It was a very successful early main battle tank for the French Army and for many other armies across the world that have bought this tank. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next one.